guys in the dark.
I was driving across country with my mom and sister when I was 16, and she was 20 years old. It was late. We were all rested still and alert. We were driving along an interstate. We needed gas and a bathroom break, so we stopped at the only rest stop within 200 miles. There was a van full of teenagers on the road trip at the gas station, as well as a small gray car parked at the pump in front of us, with two young men standing still outside of it. When we got there, everything just felt wrong. We'd been on the road for days, had seen many rest stops at night, had never been afraid up until then. My mom and sister went inside. I stayed with the car. I heard the teenagers say they were creeped out and couldn't get the pump to work, and they left in a hurry. I was watching the car right in front of us, and the two men had not moved at all. Not a single inch. They weren't talking. They weren't on their phones. They were just standing there, still as stone. My sister and mother came running back to the car, and when they got in, the two men slowly turned to look at us while not moving or pivoting the rest of their bodies. I swear to shit, we all saw the exact same thing. They had dark eyes as pitch and empty. It was truly empty, not black, not reflecting any light at all, just a void. We sped out of there. We didn't stop until we were in the next city. The worst thing about the entire experience? We couldn't find the place on any map. We knew exactly which spot on the interstate to look for, and we couldn't find it on Google Maps or any kind of paper map that we had. We even asked the locals about the creepy gas station out on the stretch of road, and got only confused looks. We've traveled on that interstate since, and there is no rest stop. While this couple and their family were in the process of purchasing this house, the renter at the time had passed away suddenly in the house from natural causes. He was in his mid-40s. Soon after, the new family had moved in. Their 2-year-old daughter had begun to talk about a ghost in the house. Given that she was just 2 years old, they assumed that she was just impressionable. Halloween had recently passed. She had a Halloween book that she enjoyed going through. The daughter's reports of seeing a ghost continued, although she never appeared to be scared of the man. She just claimed to see him. They didn't know what to feel about all of this. Just in case, they told the ghost several times that he was welcome to stay in the house, or to leave, whichever one would make him much happier. One morning, while they were all getting ready to take their daughter to school, she said that it was the man's birthday. They needed to sing him happy birthday. As a 2-year-old, she was genuinely obsessed with birthdays. They really didn't know what to do or think about it. They just joined in their daughter in singing happy birthday to their home's former tenant. That exact evening, they had looked up the obituary of the man who might be haunting their home. Of course, it happens to be his birthday. I was the occasional babysitter of a 2-year-old boy. They had been warned that the boy would sometimes seem to hold conversations with his grandfather, who had passed away before the boy was even born. Given that, they were prepared to expect a few creepy things during the evening. This went above and beyond. That night, the boy pointed to an empty wall, simply said, "Grandpa," and then he gripped the chair as he was sitting in and began to chatter his teeth uncontrollably. Understandably freaked out. So I decided to just put the boy to bed. On his way to the upstairs bedroom, we had realized the front door, for some reason, was unlocked. We looked at it. We jiggled the door to confirm that it had locked, then went upstairs to go tuck the boy in. 20 minutes later, once the kid was asleep, we had gone downstairs, so the front door was unlocked once again. We checked the house for any kind of intruder. We found nobody. Spent the rest of the night waiting on edge for what would meet us when we arrived back home. Needless to say, we did think twice before agreeing to sit for that family once again. I'm a 25-year-old female. For the purpose of being anonymous, I will refer to myself as Sabrina. I'm from Romania. English is not my native language, but I shall try my best to make the story easy to be understood. My stories contain that of what would be angels, spirits, demons, archangels, satanic people doing forbidden sessions of voodoo, and everything for this particular story. I sort of believe this is not necessarily a bad encounter, or so I lie to myself sometimes. I live in Romania. Our country has Orthodox religion, basically similar to Christianity. We believe in God and Jesus, with small certain similarities and differences. For example, I don't know if it's the same as Catholics do. We keep the deceased for a night. We call it the sleeping duty or guard night. We do not take the body out of its house that he or she lived in for their entire life in order to help the spirit find its way to heaven easier. The next 2 days, as we bury the bodies after about 3 days, we take the body to the church where loved ones, but not relatives to the deceased, may come and pay respects to that person. After this process is concluded, we bury the body at the cemetery where the priest will chant prayers, helping the spirit of the deceased understand that he or she is no longer among the living, as Romanians are very spiritual people, and believe in the afterlife, spirits, and even in bad spirits that linger the world unable to move on. Understanding this is important as the story is pretty detailed. I had 5 grandparents, 3 grandmothers, and 2 grandfathers. My first grandfather, we'll call him Michael, died when I was 6 years old due to a heart attack in August of 2007. He raised me, and his death marked my life ever since because I couldn't grasp the significance of death. I would frequently dream about him, his messages, his signs. I would hear him in my dreams as he would guide me to be a good person, and so on. But even then, as a child, I knew what was a dream and what was reality. His wife, who we shall call Anna, was my adoptive grandmother, as my real, by-blood grandmother, name was Margaret, had died when my mom was 2 years old due to an abortion. I'm not sure if she was trying to abort my mother or a third child, since my mother has a brother, and she was the second child. During the communist years, Romania had a strict law regarding abortions, and women would abort the fetuses on their own, in the privacy of their homes by themselves, as no medic would agree to help with the procedure due to the fear of being sentenced to life in prison. She died, and my mother grew up without a mother until the age of 6 years old. Needless to say, I never met her or knew anything about Margaret, my blood grandmother. But this story is about my grandmother, my adoptive one, Anna. She was a very spiritual, wise, kind-hearted, and intellectual woman. She never had children of her own. She adopted my mom and uncle. Their names aren't important for this story. My grandfather, Michael, was only dating my grandmother, but after my mother had met her on a family visit on her side, in Moldova, it's a town in Romania, they got married soon after. My grandfather was a military general, and raising 2 children of 6 years and 13 years was hard. How they decided to get married? Well, it was thanks to my mother, because as soon as she first saw Grandma Anna, she went straight to her, at the age of 6, raised both her arms up, and asked in a jolly child voice, "Hi, my name is Christina. Would you like to be my mommy?" My grandmother burst in tears, picked her up, and immediately created a connection with my mother, whom she raised and loved as her own. It was not the same for my uncle, as he was 13 at that time, and knew his own mother. Margaret had died, and why? He denounced her, and made her life much harder. After raising my mom and uncle, my uncle had 2 children of her own, a boy and a girl. She raised the girl, and then the boy was born with a calcium crisis that made her faint and hit her head. She refused to raise my cousin afterwards, as she was afraid that she would drop holding the baby. My uncle never forgave her for that, and hated her even more. When I was born, I was the light of their life, as she loved my mother from moment one, and my grandfather Michael adored my mother. Because I'm a replica of my mother, same eyes, same face, body shape, they immediately took me in, raised me as my father worked in 3 different jobs. My mom was a pediatric nurse and worked in shifts. I loved growing up with her. Like I said, she was an extremely spiritual person. She loved to meditate. She would tell me about her dreams. She taught me how to decode them and what it meant. She told me about ghost encounters that she had in her life, and always told me not to fear any spirit that comes close to me in my life because ghosts see us as beams of light guiding them to God when they are confused.
She did this until I was 18 years old. We were very close, and I was living 5 minutes away from her, so I could visit her daily, sometimes still asleep at her place. Her hobby was to read the future in some cards that she owned, not tarot cards, but normal cards with some inscriptions that she had, such as Encounter with Mysterious Man, Beware, Crying Child, Careful, Dangerous Woman. On New Year of 2017, at 3:15 a.m., I called my grandma to wish her a Happy New Year and to let her know how much I and my family loved her and appreciated her. I'd like to mention that Romanians rarely express their love by saying I love you to our mothers, fathers, grandparents. We consider that you show your love by what you do in your life and how you respect them rather than just say the words. But that night, for the first time in 23 years, I felt the need to tell her that. I still don't know why. Her voice changed. You could hear her chuckle in soft, happy tears as she would hear that, and said that she loved us all back and forever will. Nothing seemed suspicious, as I'm a very sensitive and emotional woman myself. So the night went on normally. She was at a party. I was with my fiancé at his house. The next day, 1st of January, I received a phone call from my father who told me that Grandma Anna had died the previous night. I couldn't express in words how my heart simply left my body, as if my own existence had stopped, refusing to acknowledge that she was dead. I rushed home. The police was there. The ambulance was there. They said that she died of a heart attack due to the climate change, same as my grandfather Michael did 11 years before her by the same cause. But what I found weird was the time of death. I still had her last phone call at 3:15 a.m. The policeman and ambulance staff analyzed her and declared that it was around midnight. They said that there was no way I could have talked to her at 3:15 a.m., as for by that time, the body would have already begun to rigor mortis. Who did I talk to then? Because it was her phone number. It was her voice. She seemed incredibly fine. Call it a sick joke, or just medical staff TOD. During her funeral, I decided to write her a goodbye letter, as I am very spiritual, and even though no one will read it, I like to consider that she took the message I had for her in heaven to pass it down to my other grandmother, Margaret, and 2 grandfathers, Michael and Peter. I wrote it in that letter that I do love her a lot, that I thank her for every sacrifice that she has done for me, and that I wish to tell Margaret, the real grandmother which I have never met because she died from the abortion long before I was born, that I loved her too, although I never met her. I put that letter in my grandmother's coffin, kissed her forehead, and watched her go on to her last road. My mom knows about the letter. She has yet to ask me about what I wrote in it. After the funeral, I got a phone call from my grandmother. Yes, my grandmother Anna. At first, I thought it was my father, as he would still use her phone to let all our relatives from other countries know that she had died. So normally I answered the phone, and I hear something unimaginable, impossible, formidable. I hear my Anna. I hear her voice clearly. I hear her laughing voice, with some static occurring whenever she would pause. It was a soft, fading voice, but nothing scary, nothing fearful or intimidating. It made me feel like she was indeed there, but I will admit the whole situation did freak me out. She said to me, "Hello, dear. I called to let you know that I passed the message, and I love you too." I couldn't reply as the phone call hung up right after. It left me feeling so vulnerable, as I thought maybe someone is playing a sick joke on me. But it couldn't be that. I saw my Nana be buried. Myself. I saw the coffin be sealed. I saw the letter exit inside the coffin until the very last second. No one took it out to read it. She had 3 sisters, but they were all dead, and none of them had her voice. No one could have repeated her voice that perfectly. But the even scarier part comes after that first phone call. After another week. I remember it was during another day of Monday, right 1 week after the first phone call. My phone starts ringing again under the same number. I answer. Already have forgotten about what has happened, and I hear an old lady, a voice that I couldn't feel familiar. I did not know who that lady was. It was a pretty soft but strong voice. It felt like a relatively young woman, but inexperienced. I would say around 30 to 40 years or so. I would like to mention that this time I was in the same room with my father, who owned her phone still, and I received the call. Her phone is in front of me on the table and not ringing. I open her phone as I speak to my phone. Her phone had no battery, and it was dead closed, but I still get her phone call. I answer. I hear this weird lady, and she goes like this. Hello, sweetheart. You don't know me, but I know you. I received the message, and I love you too. Then the phone call hangs up again. Needless to say, I started screaming and panicking so hard that my dad immediately went to the telephone service to find out who was playing pranks on us. They went through their profile, numbers dialed, and received. My number was not in the agenda of calls, so we decided to disable her number. Ever since then, we do not receive phone calls anymore, but I do go to the cemetery more often and talk to them. This year is the first year from her death, so we are now sort of celebrating her memory. But for me, personally, I do not celebrate her memory as I feel she is constantly physically with me. I often have dreams of her. She would often visit me at night. I'm saying dreams because I feel like I'm going insane if I ever conclude to these situations being something other than dreams. I guess I'm trying to say thank you for giving me the possibility to share this with you. To all the people out there who encounter ghosts or paranormal activity, I'm going to say what my grandmother Anna taught me all my life. Do not be afraid of them, as they are just confused, lost souls who see you as beams of light helping them to find God. The way you feel about them will conclude in the way that they react, and afterwards end up scaring you.
If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos, and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.